We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
Justin Not Bieber on Facebook. Asked us a couple of questions here. First, he wanted to let us know that, didn't we already talk about this? Axiom's website has a B stock. We talked about this already. I'm sure
that was a different manufacturer that he mentioned. I think that was EMP Tech at the time.
All right. Anyway,
so he's on top of that. He likes to make sure we know.
Yeah, Axiom does have a B stock and refurbished section. Isn't updated all that frequently, but you can call and they have more available than listed. And you get some very good deals, particularly on previous version numbers, which sound identical to everything else. That whatever. Okay,
that's right.
Do we have any experience with the Philharmonic speaker? Specifically, he's curious how the Philharmonitor would compare to the Sierra 2s, and if the dedicated mid-range driver and the three-way BMR Philharmonitor, I hate saying Philharmonitor, solve some of the mid-range issues brought on by larger rooms. Have you heard the Philharmonic?
That would have been mid-bass. No, I haven't heard the Philharmonitors. The only Philharmonic speaker I ever heard was their upgraded version of the Pioneer speakers. Which they don't make anymore, because what they used to do is get the Andrew Jones Pioneer speakers, and then they would change out the drivers and change out the crossover for a remarkably low markup for what they were doing there. Those are the only ones I ever heard from Philharmonic, so I don't have any experience with any of their current speakers or their upgraded ones. The Philharmonitors that he's talking about, they use, you can't say it's exactly the same, but it's a RAL ribbon 7010 ribbon tweeter, which is what the tweeter in the Sierra 2 is based upon. The Sierra 2 tweeter has a few tweaks and adjustments made to it that were requested by Ascend Acoustics, but it's based on the same platform. So very similar tweeters. And then they're over at Philharmonic Audio, they're using a 5.5-inch ScanSpeak woofer paired up with that, whereas over at Ascend they're using a they call it a 6-inch, but it's in a 5.5-inch diameter. It's just deeper, but it's a C's woofer. So different manufacturers for the woofers, but overall quite similar designs. The Philharmonitor is an MDF cabinet. The Sierra 2 is a laminated bamboo cabinet. So a lot of the cost is actually in the cabinet for the Sierra 2, because it's quite a costly material. And then over at Philharmonic, they're like, well, you can get bamboo. You just have to go over to Sulk Sound and request a custom cabinet. They can make it for us, which then makes the price just as much, if not more, than the Sierra 2. So you can kind of see where the price difference came from. The Philharmonitor is less expensive. So the Sierra 2s are like $14.50 a pair, and the Philharmonitors, I think, are $11.50 a pair. But that's basically the cabinet that's costing the difference. So interestingly, Dennis Murphy, who is the guy who runs Philharmonic Audio, has commented on the Sierra 2, and David Fabricant, who runs Ascend Acoustics, has commented on the Philharmonitor, and they're actually kind of in agreement with one another. Dave has basically said that the Philharmonitor sounds a little bit, quote-unquote warmer, like they've basically tried to extend the bass response and give it a little bit of a hump sort of in the mid-bass there to make it sound like a fuller speaker. And then Dennis Murphy has said that he thinks the Sierra 2 sounds a little bit sort of recessed in the mid-range and not as full. Well, that kind of makes sense.
Sounds the same, yeah.
If the other one is designed to sound fuller. So I have actually no reason to doubt either of those two men, especially since their descriptions of each other's speakers actually line up very nicely with one another. The Sierra 2 in its measurements is like ruler flat, and then the Philharmonitor in its measurements has a slight rise in the bass. So there's nothing about anything anybody's saying that doesn't line up with exactly what is being shown there. So I think that's probably the case. And if you know you have a preference for a little bit of a rise in the mid-bass and deeper bass, then the Philharmonitor might be more to your taste. They're using almost identical tweeters, so there shouldn't be much difference in the treble. As for the BMR variant of it, which goes to a three-way design, it's kind of an interesting thing because, again, Dave has explained the reason he doesn't have a three-way monitor, like a three-way bookshelf speaker, because some people have asked, could we have this, or why don't you have this? He's like, in order to do that, he would have to tamp down the tweeter and the mid-range driver. Like, the tweeter and the mid-range driver would be capable of playing louder than any single woofer. So he's like, either I need to have a big woofer, which then means you have a cabinet with a wider baffle, which starts to affect the horizontal dispersion, or I have to put in 2 woofers, at which point it's a tower, and that's exactly what he made with the Sierra Tower, right? So it's kind of interesting because the BMR Philharmonitor does use a 7-inch woofer. It's a larger woofer. That means it has a wider baffle, and to counteract that a little bit, Dennis has actually offset the tweeter and the mid-range driver to not be in the center of that baffle, but over to one side with mirror-imaged pairs. So again, nothing conflicting about what's being said there, but you're essentially making a speaker that isn't as efficient and doesn't play as loud as the tweeter and the mid-range driver possibly could, and then having to use a larger woofer to try and get some of that efficiency back. So that's sort of what's going on there. Yeah, I don't know if that really answers this question, but that's what's going on.
I already scrolled past it. Mid-range issues
All right.
brought on, but whatever. All right.
Well, that's when we're talking about mid bass. You know, in a really large room, you still have that crossover from the speaker to the subwoofer. And if you have a really large room where you're trying to pressurize a lot of air, then it might be helpful to go to a speaker that has more mid-bass output in that 80 hertz region than a small bookshelf speaker would. So will the BMR Philharmonitor do that? Well, not as much as the Sierra Tower, but a little bit more than either of the two-way speakers could. But at the same time, it's actually tamping down that tweeter and that mid-range driver a little bit. So there's a trade-off no matter what you do.
All right. His Marantz SR6010, he wonders how future-proof is it really? How long can he expect before there's a new technology that requires an upgrade? Is there anything major on the works that we're aware of? So is the 6010, does it have HDMI 2.0 and all that right now?
It does. HDMI 2.0A, HDCP
it's not like a modular design
HDMI ports.
And all that stuff, right? None of that.
No, it's not a modular. And the 6010, which is the model that came out last year, or earlier this year, it does top out at 9 speakers. So it has 7 amps built in, and it can expand to 9 speakers if you add at least 2 channels of external amplification, but it cannot go to 11. So there is one thing. It's not future-proof enough to get you to 11 speakers. Well,
and future-proof is such a...
Justin, but...
I mean, it is exactly zero future-proof. There's never been a receiver or even the modular one that was 100% future-proof. There's always a new something that's going to come out in the next year that you will not be able to get on this thing, or that will not be accessible to you, even if it was a modular design, because they won't make a module for everything. A lot of times they can't make a module for everything. So I think what he's probably worried about is major technology upgrades. For the time being, you seem to be good for the next couple of years. I don't know.
No, the scariest thing on the horizon is whatever they do with HDR going forward. Because the HDR still isn't completely settled, so we have this HLG, this hybrid log gamma that could definitely be part of the broadcast standard. We have this efforts to add dynamic metadata to HDR10 with the ST2094 standards, which could result in an HDMI 2.1 spec. Again, like we said, they're well aware, and their goal is to have all of that be firmware updatable, but maybe it won't be. They can't confirm for sure. So that's the scariest stuff that's on the horizon. But the Marantz SR6010 is no less future-proof than any other receiver you could buy right now on that front. Right. On that front, it's as good as you can get right now by being HDMI 2.0A with HDCP 2.2. So like I said, really the only thing you can't do with that you might want to do in the future is go to 11 speakers. It just isn't capable of that. Other than that, I think you're in as good shape as you really could be.
He asks if it is possible for the Marantz to display the audio type on the front panel. He can only get to show the name of the current input and can't get to show Atmos or Dolby Surround or whatever the signal type is.
Now, are you talking about the little porthole display, the little circular display, or the full display?
There's not a whole lot of
that's hidden behind the panel.
There's not a whole lot of space there at that little porthole one. You're not going to get a little.
Yeah, no, that little porthole display will only ever show what input you're using. Like I'm using the Blu-ray input or the cable box input or whatever HDMI input you're using. It'll only display that and the volume. That's all the little porthole will ever show you. But if you push down the little flap on the front, there's a full display under there, and that will show you what listening mode you're currently using. So
which should show you
Atmos regular Dolby Digital. You might be using Dolby Atmos, Dolby True HD, or it might show you Dolby True HD plus Dolby Surround if you're taking a regular Dolby True HD soundtrack and upmixing it with the Dolby Surround Upmixer. It will show you that on that front display, and it has the little graphic that shows all 13 potential speaker positions as little lights. And you can set that to either be to show you the incoming signal. So like if you're getting a 5.1 signal, it'll light up the 5.1 lights as the incoming signal, and then you can upmix that with whatever you want. You could upmix it with the Dolby Surround Upmixer, and that will show as, maybe it'll say Dolby Digital 5.1 plus Dolby Surround as your listening mode, and then the little lights will say in, and it will light up 5.1 on those lights. You can do that on the front panel, or you can have those little indicator lights show you which speakers are in use.
Right.
So you can only choose one or the other in the menu, but you can do that. Even more than that, if you just press the info button
should
on
show you
the
all
remote,
that stuff.
It'll all come up on the TV. It'll show you what input you're using, what source type of signal is coming in, and what listening mode you're using to play the speakers out. So if you press info on the remote, it shows you all of that, or you have to flop down the little front.
I like that because on the Denon, at least that I have, you press that, and it also shows you all the speakers that are incoming and what's actually being used, which is something I like to see, because sometimes I'm concerned that my children have done stuff, because they usually have, because they're terrible. All right, can we help him understand the Dolby Surround Upmixer? He's able to get a Dolby Atmos upmix when playing Dolby True HD content. Does that mean that the True HD content is now being played as object-based audio? Well, it can't be, not unless it's an Atmos mix. If it's a True HD mix, that means that it's a channel-based a signal that's coming in. What your upmixer is doing is the same thing as but similar thing as what was happened when you were using Pro Logic back in the day. Two channel signals coming in. They said, okay, it's 2 channels. But based on this algorithm that I have been programmed with called Pro Logic, I know that sounds that are mixed equally in both channels, those ones are likely the voices, and should be coming from directly in between the 2 speakers, so that I will put much of that information into the center channel. Then these other sounds, based on these parameters, these are likely meant to be coming from one side or the other, in the back of the room, towards the back of the room, or maybe in the very, very back of the room, based on phase and everything else. And it takes all that information and uses that to create put the sounds into different channels within your system. Same thing here. You're getting a True HD Dolby True HD signal. Your system says, but I also have Atmos speakers. I can use Dolby Surround, which will then take sounds that, because of the way that they were mixed into the system or between the different channels, says, okay, well, this one should be played from above, or this should be played from all speakers. It's background music or whatever, so it can come from everywhere, or however they decide to do it. So that's how the Surround Upmixer works. It doesn't.
Yeah, this is kind of an important question, because this is confusing, right? For people who aren't immersed in it, it's a confusing thing. But I want to make it very, very clear. There is no such thing as a Dolby Atmos upmixer, and there is no such thing as a DTS-X upmixer. Dolby Atmos and DTS-X are their own formats, full stop. So if you were playing a Blu-ray disc, and you thought to yourself, or maybe you even went into the audio setup menu and you selected the Dolby True HD soundtrack, maybe that's the way it's labeled in the disc, and then the full front panel display of your Marantz, or you hit the info button, showed up as Dolby Atmos, right? That's what it actually says, because on those Marantzes, that front panel, that full display that's below that little panel that can flip down, it will actually write out in full words Dolby Atmos. If that's what you're seeing, it means it's a Dolby Atmos soundtrack. Right. That is the only way you will ever see those words. And it might say Dolby True HD on the back of the Blu-ray box, or even in the audio setup menu, because Dolby Atmos comes in the form of a Dolby True HD soundtrack that has the Atmos metadata added to it. But if your Marantz actually said Dolby Atmos, it means it's a full-on Dolby Atmos soundtrack. Same case will be for DTS-X. So, in order to use those overhead speakers on soundtracks that are not a full Dolby Atmos or a full DTS-X soundtrack, they do give you an upmixer. Dolby's is the Dolby Surround Upmixer. DTS's is the DTS Neural X Upmixer. And so you can apply those upmixers to anything that is 2-channel, 5.1 channel, or 7.1 channel. So The Upmixer takes something that is not a full Atmos or DTS-X mix and allows you to still hear sound out of the overhead speakers. So yeah, hopefully that explains it. But yeah, if you're seeing Dolby Atmos on the front, it means it's actually Dolby Atmos. Right.
So he wants to upgrade to Sierra 2 mains. So he asks, could he keep his large EMP Tech center channel? How bad would the timbre mismatch be? He wants to get a Horizon center eventually, but won't be able to afford it for about 6 months or so after buying the Sierra 2s. He could probably afford a CMT 340 center, but would he be better off just using the Phantom center until he can get the Horizon if the EMP Tech doesn't match? That last thing, do not get that. Do not buy another speaker. I would not do that.
Don't get the 340 center. No. It doesn't timbre match the Sierra 2s, so you'd be no better off with a CMT 340 versus the EMP Tech.
EMP Tech, I mean, this is the thing. The RBH as a company makes very neutral, very flat speakers. Will it timbre match with the Sierra 2s? I mean, it's not going to sound the same.
Not perfect.
It's not going to sound the same, but will it sound that much different? My guess is that you're going to think it sounds pretty good. You're going to think it sounds close enough that you're not going to say.
Like if you had a really distinct sound that starts in the left speaker, pans into the center, pans into the right, and you're using Sierra 2s as your front, left, right, and the EMP Tech center as your center, I don't think that the sound will sound 100% seamless. You can't tell when it left the left speaker and went into the center and left the center and went to the right. The timbre match will not be that good. But just listening to it, I agree with Tom. I don't think it's going to be offensive to your ears. I think it can be improved upon by getting the Horizon or by getting a Sierra 2 center. But yeah, I think I certainly wouldn't say don't even give it a try. If you try it out and you're like, I can't handle it, then go use a Phantom center. There's no destruction going on here.
I mean, honestly, center channels, because of how they're oriented slightly differently and everything else, and positioned differently, even if you got the Horizon,
it's always a challenge.
It's might not perfectly seamlessly pan from side to side anyways. There might be a little bit of a difference there, if you're really, really listening for it. So, and then in which case you would be Rob, and welcome to his world, because that sort of thing will drive you crazy. So I'm going to guess that you're going to think that matches pretty well. The last time I had an RBH center, which is many, many moons ago at this point, it matched almost every single speaker I put it with. Was it perfect match? No, but it was certainly good enough where I was like, dang, I cannot believe this, I can't remember, $250, $300 center channel is pairing so well with these $2,000 towers that I have them with from a completely different manufacturer with a completely different type of tweeter, different driver configuration, different everything. It's still holding up pretty well. And I have a feeling that's going to be your experience as well. So lastly, he asked, why did Rob go with Horizons rather than Sierra Towers, and why? What was the advantage in his mind? Now, I'm going to guess that there was no Sierra Towers around when you went for the Horizons. Is that right?
Oh, that's not true. Sierra Towers existed before the Sierra Horizon was ever invented. I thought for sure that was it. I went for Horizons because I have a really tiny room, and I wanted some place to put my equipment. And the best place to put the equipment was in stands that could act as speaker stands for big bookshelf speakers, which is what I got in some custom Horizons that I basically made into gigantic bookshelf speakers. So it was a matter of floor space. That's why I didn't get towers. Also, my future plans include an acoustically transparent screen and a false wall setup, in which case the front-ported designs of the Horizons will allow me to not have to have, a large depth to that false wall, which the rear-ported towers ideally would have a greater depth to that false wall, so they're not pushed up against the physical front wall. So really, that's all it is. Floor space and preferring front-ported design to rear-ported. That was it.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.